Stop. Right now, ask yourself this: how many of your choices are truly yours? And how many are made just to get someone else's approval? Every nod, every compliment you chase is quietly stealing your power. And here's the truth most people refuse to face. Until you stop needing validation, you will never win. Imagine waking up tomorrow with no one's permission, no one's judgment, and no one's expectations holding you back. That freedom, it's not a dream. It's the moment you finally take control. And the second you do, everything changes. You wake up every day scrolling through feeds, reading comments, tallying up likes, and thinking your worth is tied to someone else's approval. Every like you crave, every nod you hope for, every compliment you chase is energy you're giving away for free. You were born with your own voice, your own instincts, and your own internal compass, yet somehow you have trained yourself to outsource your confidence. The problem is not the outside world. The problem is that you've given it the remote control to your emotions. When you act based on validation, you shrink your potential. You dim your light so others can feel comfortable in the shadow you leave behind. It's exhausting, and worse, it's unnecessary. The moment you recognize this pattern is the moment you take your power back. This is not a subtle shift, it's seismic, and needing validation is addictive. It gives a temporary high, like a sugar rush, but it never satisfies. You post a picture or share an idea and wait for someone else to say, yes, you're enough. When no one does, doubt creeps in. That doubt is poison, silently eroding your confidence. But the truth is, validation is never coming from the right source. It will never feel complete because your approval should come from yourself first. When you stop looking outside, you stop giving others the power to dictate your energy. You start making decisions based on strategy, logic, and your own values instead of social affirmation. That's where freedom lies, freedom that feels heavier than any compliment and stronger than any recognition. And think about the people you admire the most. Almost no one reached the top by seeking approval along the way. The world doesn't hand out trophies for politeness or for fitting in. The ones who move mountains are the ones who trust themselves even when the crowd says no. They ignore the judgment, the noise, the whispers. They act even when it's uncomfortable and even when no one is watching. And here's the thing: when you finally stop needing approval, you stop hesitating. You stop second-guessing every move. The energy you once wasted on worrying about what others think now flows into building, creating, and executing. That energy is pure power, and once you tap into it, there's no going back. And needing validation is a form of submission. Every time you pause because someone might judge you, every time you hold back your ideas because they might seem too much, you surrender your potential. You are literally giving someone else the key to your growth. And the scary part is, most people don't even realize they're doing it. They think it's humility or social intelligence, but it's disguised self-sabotage. The first step to owning your power is noticing this. The second step is acting anyway. Post your idea, speak your mind, make the move. You will feel fear, hesitation, and resistance, but that is the sign that you are finally stepping into your own authority. The more you do it, the easier it gets, and trust is everything. Not the trust you expect from others, but the trust you cultivate in yourself. When you no longer rely on validation, you build an unshakable internal compass. You stop questioning your judgment and start respecting your decisions. You begin to measure success by your own metrics, not someone else's applause. You stop seeking permission and start giving it to yourself. That is the foundation of power. That is the difference between someone who drifts through life and someone who commands it. People notice confidence, but more importantly, people respect consistency. And consistency only comes when you trust your own path. And the irony is, once you stop needing validation, the world starts noticing you anyway. Not because you seek attention, but because your energy changes. There's a magnetic force in self-assured action that cannot be faked. When you move without asking for approval, people either get inspired or intimidated. Either way, your impact multiplies. Every idea you share, every boundary you enforce, every bold step you take resonates louder than 1,000 likes. You stop shrinking for anyone. You stop softening your edges to make others comfortable. And in that space, your influence grows, not because you asked for it, but because you earned it through authenticity. And think of the moments you hesitated to speak up or take action because you were waiting for someone else to validate your worth. How many opportunities slipped by? How many ideas stayed in your head instead of becoming reality? Every time you hand your power to someone else, you delay your own growth. It's subtle but relentless. The energy spent seeking approval is energy stolen from your dreams. The most successful people don't have time for approval. They are too busy creating results. You don't have to mimic them to succeed. You just need to stop giving your power away. That is the radical shift that transforms ordinary lives into extraordinary ones. And ownership over your power also means embracing discomfort. When you no longer need validation, you will face resistance from others and from yourself. People are used to the version of you that hesitated, that asked permission, that softened your voice. When you step into authority, some will resist. That's fine. You cannot control reactions, only your actions. The moment you internalize that, the fear of judgment disappears. You start acting with clarity and purpose, guided by your own standards. Each decision becomes easier because it's rooted in conviction rather than expectation. Each day, confidence compounds and hesitation fades. You begin to understand that the world's applause is optional, but your commitment to yourself is mandatory. And every step toward independence from validation is a step toward real freedom. Real power is not loud or flashy. It is quiet, unshakable, and consistent. It is the ability to make choices without the shadow of someone else's opinion looming over you. It is the courage to take risks, fail, and try again without a single nod from the outside world. It is the clarity to know what matters and what doesn't. Every moment you stop seeking approval, you reclaim a part of yourself that was borrowed. It's a daily practice, not a one-time event. It's choosing action over hesitation, conviction over doubt, and self-respect over temporary comfort. And ultimately, owning your power is about alignment. It's about being honest with yourself, trusting your instincts, and refusing to shrink. Every time you choose your own path, every time you silence the need for approval, you expand your capacity to create, to lead, and to influence. You start acting with boldness, integrity, and vision, and others naturally follow. That magnetism cannot be bought, taught, or faked. It only grows from authenticity. The freedom that comes from self-validation allows you to move faster, think clearer, and act stronger. You begin to understand that the only validation that matters has always been within you. Fear is the invisible chain that keeps most people small. You hesitate, pause, and question yourself because you are afraid of what others will think if you fail. But here's the truth: the world doesn't care about your mistakes as much as you think it does. Validation from others is fleeting, fragile, and unreliable. The moment you stop needing it, fear loses its grip. You begin to act even when the outcome is uncertain, even when the path ahead looks risky. Every hesitation fueled by fear is a missed opportunity. Every "what if they judge me" thought is a silent surrender of your potential. Freedom comes when you refuse to let fear dictate your actions. The world doesn't reward hesitation, it rewards courage, and when you stop caring about approval, failure stops being a catastrophe. You start to see it for what it really is: information. Every mistake, every misstep, every setback carries lessons hidden in plain sight. People who crave validation interpret failure as shame. People who act without it interpret failure as data. They adjust, pivot, and keep moving. That mindset creates speed, efficiency, and resilience. You stop overanalyzing and start experimenting. You stop asking permission and start taking action. And the irony is that every time you fail forward, the fear that once paralyzed you loses its power. The more you experience it, the smaller it becomes. And needing validation is the anchor that slows down execution. You wait for someone to say, "good job," or "that's okay," before you commit. Meanwhile, opportunities pass, doors close, and momentum is lost. Those who act without approval move faster because they don't waste energy on others' opinions. They risk, they try, they iterate. Every failure is a stepping stone, not a scar. And the truth is, people respect results far more than they respect politeness. Fear of failure is a socially imposed limitation. Once you shade it, the playing field changes. You operate from strength, not caution. You start creating outcomes instead of chasing permission. And think of the people who changed industries, broke records, and rewrote rules. Did they stop to ask others if their ideas were good enough? Absolutely not. They acted despite doubt, criticism, and skepticism. Every one of them faced rejection and failure, yet their determination didn't waver. That's the essence of acting without needing validation. You stop asking, "will they like this?" and start asking, "does this work?" The question shifts from social approval to practical results. Execution without fear becomes your superpower. Every misstep is temporary. Every risk you take compounds into skill, experience, and confidence, and fear often masquerades as logic. What if this fails? What if I embarrass myself? What if they don't approve? These thoughts paralyze, but they are illusions created by overvaluing external opinion. When you stop needing validation, those thoughts lose relevance. You become guided by reason, courage, and your internal compass. You move through uncertainty with clarity instead of hesitation. You take calculated risks instead of imaginary ones. And every small action you take builds momentum. The more you act without waiting for approval, the more fearless you become. Fear becomes an advisor, not a jailer. And failure also reveals resilience. Most people think success is linear, but it is not. It's messy, unpredictable, and uncomfortable. Only those who are immune to the fear of judgment can navigate the chaos without collapsing. You learn that a misstep doesn't define you. Criticism doesn't destroy you, and rejection doesn't reduce your worth. It merely tests your commitment. The more you detach from external validation, the more agile you become. You fail faster, learn faster, and grow faster. That cycle is what separates those who achieve greatness from those who merely dream about it. And when you act without seeking approval, your mindset shifts dramatically. Obstacles no longer feel like walls, they are challenges to overcome. Risk doesn't feel like a threat, it feels like a necessary step in the game. Fear doesn't paralyze, it informs. And most importantly, every failure becomes a building block. You stop fearing what people think and start valuing what works. The world becomes a laboratory for experimentation instead of a stage for judgment. That perspective is revolutionary. It allows you to innovate, lead, and create at a scale that others can't reach. Every decision becomes sharper, every action more deliberate, and comparison dies when validation is irrelevant. When you constantly seek approval, you measure yourself against others. You worry about what everyone else thinks, how they perceive you, and whether you are good enough. That need keeps you stagnant. But when you stop needing validation, comparison disappears. You compete only with yourself, using every failure as a metric to improve. The focus shifts inward toward mastery and progress instead of outward toward praise. And that focus is liberating. You move faster, think clearer, and act stronger. You don't chase the applause, you chase results. And every failure without fear compounds into confidence. You learn that no setback is permanent. You discover that discomfort is temporary. You understand that external judgment is irrelevant. With each risk, your internal authority grows. Your decisions become firmer, your actions sharper, and your vision clearer. Fear used to be a chain, now it's a signal. It shows you where growth is possible, where boundaries can be pushed, and where opportunity lies. The world doesn't give you courage, you cultivate it. And the more you act without approval, the more unstoppable you become. And finally, failing without fear transforms your relationship with success. You stop chasing milestones for validation and start chasing mastery for fulfillment. Every achievement becomes a result of action, not approval. Every victory is proof of your courage, not someone else's praise. The freedom to act without seeking validation allows you to move faster, dream bigger, and achieve more than you ever imagined. You become relentless, unshakable, and unstoppable. Every decision, every risk, every failure becomes fuel for growth, power, and momentum. Fear and validation no longer dictate your life, your choices do. Comparison is the silent killer of ambition. You scroll through feeds, look at someone else's success, and suddenly your own path feels inadequate. You start questioning your abilities, doubting your choices, and minimizing your achievements. That constant need for validation feeds directly into comparison, and it keeps you small. The truth is, there will always be someone richer, smarter, faster, or louder. Chasing their approval or measuring yourself against them is a trap. Every second spent comparing is a second stolen from building your own life. You were born with unique talents, opportunities, and timing that no one else has. When you stop seeking validation, comparison dies naturally. You focus on your own growth, not someone else's highlight reel. And social media amplifies this trap. It's a curated stage where everyone performs their best moments. You see the wins, the awards, the exotic vacations, and you think everyone is ahead. You ignore the countless failures, the struggles, and the private battles that no one shares. The need for approval makes you internalize these illusions as truths. Your self-worth begins to hinge on artificial metrics. When you stop seeking external validation, you stop believing the lie. You understand that everyone's journey is messy, uneven, and full of hidden work. You start measuring yourself against your own progress instead of someone else's narrative. That shift changes everything, and comparison steals your energy. Instead of focusing on your goals, you spend mental bandwidth imagining what others think of you. You get stuck in endless loops. Am I doing enough? Do they respect me? Will they approve of this? Every thought reinforces dependency on others' opinions. But when you detach, energy is reclaimed. You redirect that focus inward toward measurable improvement, not subjective judgment. You act faster, think clearer, and execute with precision. You stop shrinking to fit someone else's mold and start expanding into your authentic self. That reclaimed energy is the fuel for breakthroughs. It's the difference between chasing validation and building dominance, and comparison also clouds judgment. When you constantly look outward, you lose clarity on what actually matters to you. Decisions are based on fear, envy, or the need to keep up rather than strategy. You waste time, money, and resources chasing someone else's path instead of crafting your own. But when validation is irrelevant, clarity returns. You assess your moves with honesty and precision. You measure impact, not appearance. You prioritize growth, results, and progress over applause. Your decisions become sharper, more deliberate, and grounded in your own vision. Comparison fades because you are busy building. You start setting standards for yourself that no one else can influence. And needing validation is an addiction that thrives on comparison. Every compliment, every nod, every recognition reinforces the need to perform for others. You start living in a loop of external affirmation instead of internal confidence. The irony is that the more you chase approval, the smaller you feel. When you remove validation from the equation, The loop breaks. You stop performing, start creating, and stop shrinking for the comfort of others. That's when growth accelerates. That's when momentum becomes unstoppable. You no longer need to justify your existence. You operate with authority, confidence, and freedom. Comparison loses all meaning because your worth is self-determined and the mindset shift is profound. When validation is irrelevant, you compete only with yourself. You track progress using your own metrics. Every skill you master, every milestone you reach, every obstacle you overcome becomes proof of growth. You don't need applause to validate effort. You see the results yourself. That internal feedback loop creates unstoppable momentum. You stop looking sideways, worrying about others' success, and start moving forward with relentless focus. Comparison is replaced with mastery. Envy turns into inspiration. You become obsessed with execution, not opinion. Your results are now driven by ambition, not approval, and freedom grows exponentially when you stop comparing. Every time you catch yourself looking at someone else's life, you remind yourself that their journey has no bearing on yours. External validation becomes optional, not necessary. You operate from alignment, not envy. You start creating, experimenting, and taking risks without hesitation. The mental space once used for comparison now becomes the space for innovation. You begin to realize that success is not a race against others. It is a marathon against your former self. Your confidence compounds and fear of judgment evaporates. That freedom is power. And comparison distorts perception of time and effort. You see someone else's achievements and assume they were easy or instantaneous. You ignore the years of struggle, the failures, and the unseen work behind the scenes. That illusion triggers doubt and paralysis. But when you detach from validation, perception realigns. You measure effort accurately, respecting your own process. You celebrate incremental progress instead of fixating on arbitrary milestones. You start building a long-term vision grounded in reality, not appearances. That perspective eliminates pressure and cultivates resilience. You begin to understand that your timeline is yours alone, and needing validation keeps you reactive. Detaching makes you proactive. When your actions are guided by comparison, you react to the world, someone else's success, judgment, or opinion. When your actions are guided by internal metrics, you respond with strategy, clarity, and authority. You act because it makes sense, not because someone else might approve. You start setting your own rules, establishing your own standards, and pushing boundaries without waiting for permission. Comparison fades because you are too busy building results. Validation no longer dictates energy allocation. You invest time, focus, and effort into what matters to you. And finally, ignoring comparison transforms your influence. You no longer look to others for permission, approval, or validation. Your authenticity becomes your magnet. People are drawn to self-assured action, clarity, and independence. You inspire through presence, not performance. You lead through results, not popularity. You become unshakable because your confidence is self-sourced. Comparison becomes irrelevant because your worth is undeniable, measurable, and owned. Your growth is unstoppable because it comes from alignment with your values, not someone else's spotlight. Validation is optional, and success becomes inevitable. Freedom is the ultimate reward when you stop needing validation. Every second you spent asking for approval, worrying about judgment, or shrinking for comfort is energy lost. The moment you detach from external validation, you unlock a space where choices are yours alone. You stop apologizing for wanting more, for thinking bigger, and for chasing audacious goals. Freedom feels heavy at first because it's unfamiliar, but that weight is the weight of power. You realize your actions no longer need permission, they only need purpose. Every decision becomes clearer, sharper, and more aligned with your values. The life you want starts to unfold when you stop bending for others. You own your actions, your time, and your results. That's the first taste of true freedom. And when you stop seeking validation, boundaries become effortless. You no longer say yes to things that drain you or compromise your integrity. People may resist, misunderstand, or even challenge your choices, but their discomfort is irrelevant. Setting boundaries becomes a sign of strength, not selfishness. Every no spoken without fear is a declaration of self-respect. Freedom is saying yes to yourself more than you say yes to anyone else. It's recognizing that your energy is finite and your focus is precious. Each boundary enforced strengthens confidence and aligns action with intention. The more you honor your limits, the more space you create for growth. Boundaries are not walls, they are the scaffolding of freedom. And independence grows naturally when validation is irrelevant. You start trusting your instincts without seeking reassurance. Decisions that once paralyzed you become simple, decisive, and powerful. You no longer hesitate for approval, you act for impact. Freedom allows you to experiment, innovate, and pivot without anxiety. Every move is intentional, every step purposeful. The independence that comes from self-validation allows momentum to compound. You start to lead without permission, create without fear, and pursue without hesitation. Your energy is spent on action, not approval. Independence is not just a state, it is a mindset, and it fuels every outcome you desire. And freedom also brings clarity. The need for validation clouds thinking, causing hesitation and doubt. When you detach, you see opportunities, risks, and solutions with unprecedented clarity. You know which decisions align with your long-term vision and which ones are distractions. Clarity allows speed and execution and precision and focus. You waste less energy, make fewer mistakes, and prioritize the actions that generate the biggest results. The world's noise fades, and your internal compass becomes your guide. Clarity breeds confidence, and confidence breeds impact. Acting from clarity is the hallmark of those who win without permission. Freedom allows you to see, decide, and act with unmatched power, and the courage to act independently grows exponentially. Every choice you make without approval strengthens your inner authority. You start taking risks others avoid, challenging norms, and pushing beyond comfort zones. Fear loses its ability to control you because your approval comes from within. Courage transforms from a rare skill into a daily habit. It shows up in decisions, relationships, and business moves. Each act of bravery compounds, creating momentum that cannot be stopped. You stop shrinking, stop apologizing, and start thriving. Freedom is inseparable from courage. It is the reward for standing tall without validation. Every bold action reinforces your self-trust, and freedom redefines success. No longer measured by applause, recognition, or comparison, success becomes personal, measurable, and self-defined. You set your metrics, your milestones, and your pace. Every achievement feels earned, authentic, and unshakable. When validation is irrelevant, success loses its fragility and becomes a byproduct of consistent action. The wins are yours because you earned them, not because someone validated them. That is empowerment. You no longer chase approval, you chase mastery. You no longer compare, you create. And every success reinforces the truth. External validation is optional, but internal authority is essential. Real success lives in freedom, and relationships transform when you live validated from within. You no longer seek approval in interactions, which changes the energy of every connection. People are drawn to those who are self-assured and unshakable. You set the tone, establish respect, and attract others who operate from the same frequency. Codependency fades, manipulation loses power, and authenticity becomes magnetic. Relationships become alliances, not mirrors. Every interaction becomes about mutual growth, not permission seeking. Freedom allows you to engage fully without compromise. The quality of your connections improves because they are built on respect, not need. Self-validation strengthens both influence and intimacy, and freedom accelerates growth. When external approval is irrelevant, hesitation disappears and speed replaces doubt. Every decision, every experiment, every bold step compounds learning and results. You act fast, adapt faster, and iterate without fear. Energy previously wasted on comparison, judgment, or worry is redirected to execution. That momentum fuels mastery in all areas of life, business, relationships, health, and personal development. You learn exponentially because you are no longer frozen by fear of criticism. Freedom is not passive, it is active, relentless, and results-driven. Every day becomes a catalyst for progress. Your growth is now unstoppable, and responsibility becomes clearer under freedom. When you rely on no one else's validation, you own every outcome. Mistakes are yours to fix, wins are yours to amplify, and effort is yours to invest. There is no blaming, no hiding, no excuse. Freedom requires accountability, and accountability creates mastery. Every decision carries weight, but that weight feels like empowerment rather than pressure. You stop deflecting and start leading your life intentionally. The discipline to act without approval builds resilience. Freedom is not chaos. It is authority over your time, choices, and results. And responsibility is the backbone of that authority. And ultimately, freedom rewards those who act without needing validation. It transforms hesitation into action, doubt into clarity, fear into courage, and limitation into growth. Every step taken without permission compounds into confidence, momentum, and mastery. You stop chasing applause, avoid comparison, and lead from authority. External judgment becomes irrelevant, and internal alignment becomes your guide. Freedom allows boldness to flourish, decisions to sharpen, and results to multiply. It is the prize for owning your power, trusting your instincts, and refusing to shrink for anyone. When you embrace freedom fully, life no longer requires permission. You create it deliberately. That is the ultimate victory.